This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Granger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. Oh, she's back. Our friend Cassandra Shand. She's from our Young Voices contributor stable of really sharp folks. She has a degree, Master's Public Policy from the University of Chicago. Just because that wasn't enough, she went over to Cambridge, got another degree. Really sharp person. We've had her on before. Welcome back, Cassandra. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
As per usual, when you're on, we're going to talk a little bit about some goings on overseas. We've been talking a lot about Russia and Ukraine, but there's some stuff going on just to the southeast of that we need to pay attention to. A country that has been very important to American foreign policy for the last 25, 30 years, but we don't always talk about it because it's in the background. Pakistan made its way into the headlines this past week. The removal of Imran Khan as the prime minister. Let's start big picture, though. Why is Pakistan such of strategic interest and geopolitical importance to the United States and, more pressingly, India, China, Russia? They're surrounded by a lot of heavy hitters in what's going on in the world right now, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. They definitely they're very involved with a bunch of different countries. I'd say first China. China is trying to extend an economic corridor from Pakistan to Afghanistan, kind of as part of like a BRI measure, the Belt and Road Initiative. So that kind of directly counters American interests there. Pakistan did not vote to remove Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. So this is before Khan left office, but definitely there we kind of see that they're still kind of favoring Russia. Pakistan does not like India. There was no bilateral relationship between India and Pakistan during Khan's tenure. Pakistan's current friendliness with the U.S. China is their primary strategic partner. The U.S. there's definitely a lot of anti-American sentiment there within the ruling officials. They did not want the U.S. to put any sort of base or have any sort of CIA presence at all whatsoever in Pakistan. The current status quo is that the U.S. is a little anxious about what Pakistan is thinking, which way it's going to go. And I think with the ousting of Khan, we could see a movement in either direction.
Now, there's a couple other things at play here why we get nervous about Pakistan. They have nuclear weapons. They are perpetually in a shooting war with India over the Kashmir region. They have very complicated and longstanding ties to Russia, going all the way back through the Soviet years. We know about their constant involvement and, frankly, being a major player in our own role in Afghanistan over the last 20 years. You can go all the way back to harboring bin Laden, all the way through to the downfall of Afghanistan, where a lot of those guys went to Pakistan, then came back. There's a lot of stuff to sort through here. But in the near term, does America even have a coherent policy towards Pakistan right now? Because it sure seems like it's been kind of slapdash, and then this kind of caught a lot of people off guard. Obviously, we're paying attention to other things, and America's a little bit isolationist in mood right now. Do we have a current, if I just ask the normal Politico in America, what's our standing policy towards Pakistan? Does anybody have a coherent answer?
I don't think they have one, actually, no. I think right now we've had this massive pivot towards Asia. So that's where a lot of our resources pre-Ukraine crisis were allocated. Now we have Ukraine and Russia. Now we're kind of focusing a little bit on Europe again. But as far as the whole Pakistan, Afghanistan area, we've largely moved out. I think our main concern with Pakistan kind of has to do also with its neighbor, India. India is part of the Quad. It's a major strategic ally of ours, but right now India is kind of being weird. Like, I mean, they're also kind of courting Russia at the same time. So I think if anything, anyone who discusses Pakistan might be like, oh, what about India too? I think there's a lot of like precarity right now in that area. But as we kind of previously discussed, like nothing happens in isolation. Pakistan is heavily involved with other countries that we're very, very concerned about, namely China. So yeah, I think I don't think we really have a coherent strategy. I think it's more just like Pakistan is involved with so many different players that it's hard to kind of keep track.
Talk about that Quad for just a second, because that's a term, talking to Cassandra Shand. That's a term that our Australian friends have been talking about a lot, our Southeast Asia friends. They're very apparent. That's not something that gets talked about in Western media, and especially American media, even in policy circles. They don't talk about it, but that's something our friends over on that side of the world, they talk about it constantly. It's an important topic to them. Just real quick, explain. I know you mentioned the countries. Explain the Quad and why that's so important.
Yeah, so the Quad is our current defensive alliance in kind of like the Pacific area. We have Japan, we have Australia, we have India and the US. It's kind of like our main fortress against anything that happens around Australia, around the South China Sea. That's kind of where all of our efforts are focused, through the Quad at least. That's what the Quad focuses on. We do a lot of military engagements with them, military exercises. The Quad was kind of one of the underlying reasons we had like the AUKUS agreement, which was kind of like this now, like the US and UK working together to get the Australians and nuclear submarines. But yeah, the Quad, at least I think it definitely is a major alliance in that area. And I think it's more fragile right now than it has been as of late, at least with these new conflicts in Ukraine and India's like continuous kind of like, oh, what are we gonna do? India's kind of like a lack of decisiveness as to whether they want to go on the American side or the Russian side, even though we have an agreement with them. So yeah, I think that's more of an American issue rather than anything else, personally. But
We'll continue our conversation with Cassandra Shand, a Young Voices contributor. Her tale continues right after this.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And anytime you're talking Pakistan and foreign policy, they're attached to the hip with India because of the longstanding conflicts. You have a classic culture there. You have a clash of religion there. You have a lot of history, some really ugly recent history, even not just Kashmir, just in general. The part of the problem with India is, and I actually kind of feel sorry for them in this current conflict. Their military system, a lot of their infrastructure stuff, that's all Russian made and Russian technology, which means you have to have Russian replacement parts, both militarily and things like their power grid. All that comes from Russia. So they're not really in a position to just kick Russia to the curb. It would be devastating to them. But at the same time, morally and issues like this, some ways they want to be more diplomatically aligned towards America. Yeah. And then to go to the other hand, the Modi government has had some human rights issues of late. We give them a hard time on that. Russia does not. So that I don't know how you even keep up with what India is doing. When Pakistan looks at let's be generous here and call them a frenemy. When they're looking at India on their border, they don't see stability. They see Russia, which has been a long time frenemy to them as well, is a good term to use. They're tied up in Ukraine and it's not looking good. If I'm Pakistan, to be fair to them, I'm looking at China and going, you're about the only person in the room that I can halfway trust here, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good way of looking at it. I'd say that same mentality applies for us, right, with respect to India. I think that, there's ways to kind of like show like some tacit support for Russia without being so blatant about their intentions. Like, for instance, like right now, India has like a $2 billion export agreement with Russia. After everyone's like kind of condemned Russia, all of this stuff, that's a major signal to the rest of the world that India is a partner or still intends to be a partner with Russia. On our side, right? The what do they call it? The S-400 missiles. We sanctioned China. We sanctioned Turkey for receiving imports of this like kind of like rocket missile defense system from Russia, and we do the same for India. India has them. We never condemned them whatsoever. We saw them as an ally. We're like, okay, whatever. It's like we'll ignore it this time. And now we're in a situation where India is kind of playing both sides. It's looking kind of scary for us, at least with like our existing security commitments.
Yeah, there was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge about about 2-3 years ago. It became a big deal. The Trump administration did the right thing and kind of looked the other way and let them buy these systems from Russia, because again, their entire military is based off of the Russian system. We're slowly trying to get them onto ours, but that's not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of infrastructure there. We did we did a bad thing that was the right thing there, because it would have been devastating to their defense. But coming back to Pakistan for a second, talking militarily, kind of the unique thing about Pakistan here, and Imran Khan found this out the hard way. They have elections, they have political parties. Obviously, it's a strong Islamic country in a lot of ways, but the military still runs that country. And Imran Khan found out the hard way. Shahbaz Sharif's coming into power. We'll see what his relationship is with the military. But that's the dynamic that you have to talk about in dealing with Pakistani politics, which good, bad, or indifferent, since they got nukes and they got a lot of enemies. The military is what runs Pakistan. How does that change the calculus where, it's an elected official, but underneath it, if the military don't like you, that's who's really got the power in the country?
There are some allegations that Khan got into office because he was kind of on the side of the military. And I think that I'm kind of inclined to think that's actually correct. I think that the military is pretty active with suppressing any opposition from other parties. And then I don't know what happened, but I guess the military changed its mind, and you have these strong opposition leaders, now Sharif. The military definitely is a major player in Pakistan, and it's very structured. It's like at least like from what my Pakistani friends explained to me, it's very much like if you work in the military, you work hard in the military, that is a very honorable like pathway to success. It's a very rich hierarchy, and it's very well respected in the military in Pakistan. So I think it's like if you change the military's control over Pakistan, you have to change kind of the cultural dynamics around the military as well. It's definitely a hard goal to accomplish.
Yeah, talking to Cassandra Shand about goings on in Pakistan. Okay. We don't know a whole lot about Shahbaz Sharif. He's a steel magnate from a long dynastic family. He seems on the surface like there would be some stability here, at least for the moment. What do we make of Pakistan? Again, everybody's attention in the world dynamic is on Russia and Ukraine for obvious reasons. One of the problems I'm concerned about, and you do foreign policy, so you tell me, there's no version of this Russian conflict with Ukraine where Russia doesn't come out of it weaker and looking more vulnerable. There's a lot of flashpoints that Russian overlording, for lack of a better word, has kind of kept them tapped down. There's a lot of old grievances. Is there a concern that some of these things would start flashing up, and in places like Pakistan, like Kashmir, there's a lack of influence? There could be a lot of world problems that come out of a lack of where Russia has been helping these countries like Pakistan, like India. That attention's elsewhere. Is there potential for more instability based out of that?
That's an interesting question. I kind of think that, kind of believe that because of like the UN human rights vote, kind of kicking off Russia from the Human Rights Council, I think that the band of countries you saw grouping together to kind of like not say anything against Russia, like not, you saw like South Africa, you saw Pakistan, India. You see all these countries that have heavy like Russian influence in some aspect of their government. They're all kind of taking the sideline on this issue, and I think that concern is shared by many other countries, and it's unlikely to, in my opinion, for these countries to kind of like let Russian influence fall too hard in their own nation. So I don't think much will change, and I think right now the length of the war is what plays in Russia's best favor. I think that they might be economically shaken a little bit, but they're still heavily involved in Africa and Pakistan and elsewhere. Yeah. So.
Yeah, talking to Cassandra Shand. Just to put a bow on this Pakistan thing real quick. I was kind of joking about it, but I'm serious. I don't know that we have a coherent policy towards countries like Pakistan. I think the Biden administration has shown that they're more on optics than policy right now. But if we did have a coherent strategy towards a Pakistan, and again, these things are linked with India. We're going to talk to somebody else about India because you got to talk about one if you talk about the other as far as these things go. What should our policy be towards Pakistan? Is what would we do if we were trying to make things a little bit better and build some inroads in this very turbulent part of the world? Because we don't have a lot of cash right there. We're still pretty embarrassed in that part of the world from the Afghanistan debacle. If we were going to try to do something good here, what would that look like?
I do think that the average Pakistani citizen is concerned about kind of extremism in Pakistan. I think that some sort of security commitments in that regard might be smart, not American-led, more military-led initiatives. That would accrue definitely a lot of more like domestic support for any involvement with the U.S. I think that's one of the main issues we find in Pakistan. It's that that's what Khan's using right now. It's like, oh, like we're so scared now that Americans, the Americans are pulling the strings. Like you don't want to be an American slave. We need to fight that narrative, and I think that's the first step to achieving our policy goals in that area. We also, in the best case scenario, we'd kind of be strong against Pakistan's kind of support for China. But at the same time, and I'm happy you're going to have an Indian expert on next, but we kind of have to rectify at least a little bit like Pakistan's animosity towards India if we're going to work with India as well. So it's kind of like it's fighting that fire, which is very difficult because it's been a decades-long dispute. So
yeah, not a lot of good answers, but a whole lot of questions we're going to have to pay attention to going forward, which means we'll keep having folks like Cassandra Shand back to talk about it. Until we have you back again, let folks know where they can follow you, what you got going on, and how to follow you on social media until we see you again on Her Tell.
Yeah, sure. Twitter at Cassandra Shand.
Nice, easy. That's Shand. I learned the hard way last time I did this and I messed up the graphic. Sorry about that. But Cassandra Shand, always fun to talk to you. Appreciate you finding the time on short notice. And we always enjoy talking to you. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.